I just got evidence the rapture is coming. It started with a dream. I've never been one to put much stock in dreams. They're just the brain's way of processing the day's events, right? But this one was different. It felt real, too real. In the dream, I was standing in the middle of a vast empty field. The sky was a deep swirling gray, and the air was thick with the scent of ozone. I could feel a storm coming, but there was no wind, no rain, just silence. Then I heard it, a sound like a trumpet, loud and clear, echoing across the field. I turned toward the sound, and that's when I saw them, people, hundreds of them, rising into the air, their faces filled with joy and wonder. They were being lifted up until they disappeared into the clouds. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. It was just a dream, I told myself. But it felt like more than that. It felt like a warning. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The world seemed quieter somehow. The usual hustle and bustle of the city was muted, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. I tried to go about my day as usual, but the dream kept creeping back into my thoughts. I found myself glancing at the sky, half expecting to see people floating up into the clouds. It was ridiculous, I knew, but I couldn't help it. Then that afternoon, I got an email. It was from an address I didn't recognize, with no subject line. The message was short and cryptic. "The time is near, prepare yourself." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. It had to be a prank, right? Some spammer trying to freak me out. But something about it felt intentional, like it was meant for me. I clicked on the sender's address, but it was just a random string of numbers and letters. I tried to reply, but the message bounced back. It was as if the email had come from nowhere. I tried to put it out of my mind, but over the next few days, strange things kept happening. I'd hear that trumpet sound in the distance, faint but unmistakable. I'd see flashes of light in the sky, like lightning but without the thunder. And then there were the people. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I started noticing them. People who seemed off. They were pale, their eyes hollow, their movements jerky and unnatural. They'd stare at me as I passed, their gazes intense and unblinking. It was like they were watching me, waiting for something. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just stress or lack of sleep, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Then one night I got another email. This one was longer, more detailed. It talked about the rapture, the biblical event where the faithful are taken up to heaven, leaving the rest of humanity behind. The email claimed that the rapture was imminent, that the signs were all around us, if only we knew where to look. It listed specific dates, times, and locations where miraculous events would occur. At first, I dismissed it as the ramblings of a religious fanatic, but then I noticed something. One of the locations was just a few miles from my apartment. I don't know what possessed me to go. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was that nagging feeling in the back of my mind that something was about to happen. But I grabbed my camera and drove to the location, a small park on the outskirts of the city. The park was empty when I arrived, the streetlights casting long shadows across the grass. I parked my car and walked to the center of the park, my camera in hand. The air was still the silence, almost oppressive. Then I heard it. The trumpet sound, just like in my dream. It was louder, this time closer. I turned toward the sound, my heart pounding, and that's when I saw them. People, dozens of them, emerging from the shadows. They were dressed in white, their faces serene, their eyes filled with a kind of otherworldly light. They moved in unison, their steps slow and deliberate, as if they were being guided by some unseen force. I raised my camera and started filming, my hands trembling. The people began to gather in the center of the park, forming a circle. Then one by one, they started to rise. It was like something out of a movie. Their feet left the ground, their bodies lifting into the air as if they were weightless. They didn't struggle, didn't panic. They just floated, their faces filled with peace and joy. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of elaborate hoax, a mass hallucination? Or was it real? Was this the rapture? I kept filming, my camera capturing every second of the event. The people rose higher and higher until they disappeared into the clouds. The trumpet sound faded and the park was silent once more. I stood there for a long time, my mind reeling. I didn't know what to do. I had just witnessed something impossible, something that defied all logic and reason, and I had it all on camera. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. When I got back to my apartment, I uploaded the footage to my computer and watched it again and again, trying to find some explanation, some flaw that would prove it was fake. But there was nothing. The footage was clear, unedited. It showed exactly what I had seen. People rising into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. I didn't know what to do with the footage. I couldn't just post it online. No one would believe me. They'd think it was a hoax or some kind of viral marketing stunt. But I couldn't just ignore it either. This was too big, too important. I decided to reach out to someone who might understand. I found a forum for people interested in biblical prophecy and posted the footage along with a brief explanation of what I'd witnessed. The response was immediate. Some people were skeptical, accusing me of faking the footage, but others believed me. They said the signs were all there. The trumpet sound, the people rising into the sky. They said the rapture was coming, and that I had been chosen to witness it. I didn't know what to believe. Part of me wanted to dismiss it all as nonsense, but another part of me couldn't ignore what I'd seen. It was real. It had happened. Over the next few days, I started noticing more signs. The news was filled with reports of strange phenomena, miraculous healings, unexplained lights in the sky, people disappearing without a trace. It was like the world was unraveling, and no one knew why. Then I got another email. This one was from a man named Daniel, who claimed to be a pastor. He said he had seen my footage and believed it was genuine. He invited me to meet him at his church to discuss what I had witnessed. I was hesitant, but I needed answers. I drove to the church the next day, my mind filled with questions. The church was small and unassuming, nestled in a quiet neighborhood. Daniel was waiting for me at the door, his expression serious but kind. "Thank you for coming," he said, shaking my hand. "I know this must be overwhelming for you." I nodded, not sure what to say. He led me inside to a small office filled with books and religious artifacts. We sat down, and I showed him the footage on my laptop. He watched it in silence, his expression growing more and more grave. When it was over, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "This is it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "The rapture, it's happening." I felt a chill run down my spine. But how? Why now? Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but the signs are all there. The world is in chaos, and people are searching for answers. This is God's way of calling his people home." I didn't know what to say. It all sounded so surreal, but I couldn't deny what I'd seen. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You've been given a gift," he said. "A chance to witness something miraculous. But with that gift comes responsibility. You need to share this with the world. People need to know what's coming." I nodded, my mind racing. He was right. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to share it, no matter how crazy it sounded. I spent the next few days editing the footage, adding context and explanations. I posted it online, along with a detailed account of what I'd witnessed. The response was overwhelming. Some people believed me, praising me for my bravery and insight. Others accused me of being a fraud, of spreading fear and misinformation. As the days passed, more and more reports of strange phenomena began to surface. People claimed to have seen angels, heard heavenly voices, witnessed miracles. The world was in chaos, and no one knew what to believe. Then one night, I had another dream. I was back in the field, the sky swirling with dark clouds. The trumpet sound was louder, this time almost deafening. I looked up and saw them, thousands of people rising into the sky. But this time, I wasn't just watching. I was one of them. I felt myself being lifted off the ground, my body weightless, my heart filled with an indescribable joy. I looked down and saw the world below fading away into the distance. And then I woke up. I was still in my bed, my heart pounding, my sheets soaked with sweat. But something was different. The air felt charged, like a storm was about to break. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The streets were empty, the usual noise and activity replaced by an eerie silence. I glanced at the sky, and that's when I saw it. a faint golden light growing brighter and brighter. It was like the sun, but softer, more ethereal. I grabbed my camera and ran outside. My heart racing. The light was coming from above, illuminating the entire city. I raised my camera and started filming, my hands trembling. Then I heard it, the trumpets sound louder than ever before. It echoed across the city, filling the air with its haunting melody. I looked up and saw them. People rising into the sky, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were dressed in white, their faces filled with peace and joy. I felt a pull, a force drawing me upward. My feet left the ground, my body lifting into the air. I didn't struggle, didn't panic. I just floated, my heart filled with an overwhelming sense of peace. I looked down and saw the world below, fading away into the distance, the city, the people, the chaos. I don't know how long it lasted. It could have been seconds, or it could have been hours. But when I opened my eyes, I was somewhere else. It was a place of indescribable beauty, a vast golden landscape filled with light and color. The air was filled with music, a melody so pure and perfect. It brought tears to my eyes, and all around me were the people, the ones who had risen into the sky. They were here in this place, their faces filled with joy and wonder. I didn't know where I was, but I knew one thing for sure: this was the rapture, and I had been chosen to be a part of it. As I stood there, surrounded by light and beauty, I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. All the fear, the doubt, the chaos of the world below, it was gone. I was home. But even as I basked in the glory of this place, I couldn't help but think of the world I had left behind, the people who hadn't been chosen, who were still down there struggling and suffering. I didn't know what would happen to them, but I knew one thing for sure: